Hello, folks. Welcome to Rational Science, and we have a very great day today. Hopefully, it's probably going to be quick, short today. Okay, we're going to be dealing with vector. We're going to try to find out what a vector is. Okay, but before I can get to that, I had a little incident this week. Some of you are well aware of it. What happened? And it's a miracle that I can transmit today. Okay, because if it was my other channel, I wouldn't be able to transmit. It's blocked. Okay, they blocked the other one. What was all that about? It turns out that this is what they sent me from the folks, the powers that be. Okay, say your content was removed due to violation of our community guidelines. Well, I didn't know I violated any guidelines. I wasn't even aware of it because it's the first time. This is just a warning. If it happens again, your channel will get a strike, and you won't be able to do things like upload, post, live stream for 1 week. Okay, and yeah, these are the types of notes that I got from them. Okay, let's see. I got another note here from them. I hope I'm still on. Uh, Let me know otherwise because I just got a message from YouTube. So I don't know if they're going to let me to talk today. Okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so let me know if you can't see me or hear me. Okay. Anyways, I got another warning. I got several warnings. I got warnings all over the place, and this was why I was warned because of medical misinformation. Medical. Okay, thank you. Please confirm every now and then because I don't know if they're going to let me finish today. Anyways, it's medical misinformation. I'm misinforming people. I was not even aware of it. That I was misinforming anybody. It was just outrageous. Says YouTube is a safe place for all. We have to keep it safe, no doubt about it. Says YouTube does not allow content that spreads medical misinformation that contradicts local health authorities. That's I guess, the rule, the policy, whatever that I violated unknowingly, unwittingly. I didn't even know I had violated anything. All I did was put a video that's out there, and it's a video from a conference, an international conference, okay, where different speakers get to say what they think openly. And here they treated it like, Kim Jong from North Korea. They simply censored it. That's how simple it is. And it wasn't because I had uploaded somebody else's video. That wasn't the reason. The reason is what you see there. It's that I'm spreading misinformation. I wasn't even aware of it. So this was really a shock to me that they would go to that extreme to someone who's not even aware, unwittingly puts up a video, and I get almost a strike there. They said it's just a warning, but my other channel's blocked. So I had to protest that because they say, here we're giving you a warning. The warning turned into a strike because I can't get in there. Some parts of it. I can't get into the studio and I can't get into my dashboard. Okay, and this is what they're saying there. You can see it says, because it's the first time, this is just a warning. If it happens again, your channel will get a strike and you won't be able to do things like, upload, etc., etc. Okay. Thank God they told me all this. Because maybe I would have immediately put another video and they would have, just given me the strike without me having a chance to even, challenge it. And right now I can't even challenge it on my other channel because I can't get into the part of my channel where you're supposed to do the challenging in. Can't get into my studio. Okay, and so this is what I have on that channel now. It says your content was removed due to violation, blah, blah, blah. And it's because it's the first time, it's just a warning. No, it was more than a warning. I mean, I can't get in there. So maybe it's the system. I don't know. Maybe it's a human. I have no idea. So what was all this about? And I'm gonna have to talk in code here because I didn't know, this was such a big deal. In fact, I pay very little attention to this because it's not part of my theory, my extinction theory. Disease. So I don't care about it at all. Okay. The only time I raise the issue of disease is like to say, that never happened. Like a disease never killed any species. Okay. That's the only reason I bring in the issue of disease. But so I got to talk a little bit in code here, and I hope you can read between the lines there. Okay. Uh, a woman, I guess I can say that because, today all pronouns and nouns are acceptable. So you can call a she a he and vice versa. So I guess I can get away with this. Okay. A woman spoke at an international conference. Okay. And those of you who did manage to get to see the video know what I'm talking about. Okay. And what was the issue? The issue was a malady, ailment, some kind of poison out there. Okay, that's what the topic was about. I can't even mention the topic because I'm afraid they're going to cancel my my channel. So I can't mention the word. It's a bad word. You can talk about anything today. You can talk about homosexuality, about God, but you cannot talk about this. Okay, so I hope you can read between the lines. And she said it's been around. This was what caught my attention for 70 years. And I'm saying, oop, I didn't know that. So if it's been around for 70 years, well, we got a little bit of a problem because if that is so, then some of the information that's out there is false. Assuming it's true, right? What this person is saying, well, then the information that you see out there is false, okay? Again, if it's true, that's a big if, okay? She's been censored. I tried to locate her everywhere, and they simply banned this individual. I mean, can no longer speak. Okay, you can't find them. You find other people talking about her, right? But not her herself. Okay. Can't even mention her name. So sorry, can't tell you her name, not here. But I'll give you some clues in a little while. And that's, I guess, how much she is feared. I thought she spoke very fluently, very intelligently. Okay, that's what also caught my attention. And I think that's the reason she is feared. I mean, you can talk about diseases. If nobody believes what you're saying, nobody cares because the way you talk about it, they say, well, he's a loony, nobody's going to believe in him. Then they don't do anything to you. But this person comes across as a knowable and authoritative person. And so a lot of people might believe this individual. And so if that's the case, then they are afraid of what he might say. Okay. And he does talk about investments, and he mentions some people, and maybe that's what it's all about. The fact that, there's a bit of danger out there, right? But if what this person's saying, it destroys everything that you've been told. Okay. And that's a big if. Okay. I'm talking about a big if here. Okay. So one fellow tells me, who saw the video, he says the following. He says, I've heard you arguing against authority in science many times. Yet this gal should be more credible for what? Authority, doctor, double standards. Well, I think this fellow has it wrong. He's got the wrong idea of what this is all about. So let's find out what this is all about. It's not about authority. It's not about belief. It's about facts. Okay? And then people say, Bill, I thought you said facts are not part of science, that you don't care about facts. Okay, so let's clarify that. We've got facts and we got facts, okay? So let's make sure we understand what the difference are between facts and facts. We have the facts by mathematical physicists, okay? Mathematicians. And what they do is they convert their theories, their explanations, and they say that's a fact. It goes from hypothesis, according to them, to theory, and from theory to fact once everybody votes for it. Or, I don't know, 50% plus 1 or 90%. I have no idea how they determine facts, but they say space-time is a fact. Quantum mechanics is a fact. They say these things. It's a fact. You can't change it anymore. Okay? And so here are some examples. This is what they're saying. And they turn these opinions, these theories into facts. They say a particle can be at two places at once, for else your computer wouldn't work. Or gravity is geometry, the bending of time. That's the reason, the Earth doesn't fly out of the solar system. It's caught in this depression, warp time. And we've proven it with gravity probe B and GPS. So those are theories that the mathematicians call facts. Okay, those are not the facts we're talking about here. Okay, we're talking about some other kind of fact. We're saying, look, this man lying here for over a month, he doesn't breathe, he doesn't move, he's dead. That's a fact. Okay, you can't say, well, maybe, I don't know. No, that's a fact. Okay, more clearer even, we have the chair is on the left side of the table. Hopefully that's a fact. We're all looking at the table. We see the chair on the left-hand side of the table. That's a fact. Okay? Now, you can argue all you want. You can stand on your head. That's a fact. Okay? And a device was registered at the patent office. Okay? You go to the patent office and you register a device. Now, that sounds like a fact. I might tell you, I might say, so-and-so went to the patent office and registered a patent. And you might say, well, I have no confirmation of that. So it's a fact for me, but not for you. But you can go to the patent office and there you can see, the signatures, paperwork, whatever you need there. You say, okay, it's a fact now for me too. In that sense, it's a fact. It's a fact in the sense that someone registered, there's a signature there, there's a record, etc., etc. In that sense, it's a fact. The fact that it's not a fact is because you're not aware of the fact. But that is a fact. It exists. There's a signature there, okay? And it's just that you're not convinced of it because you have not gone to the patent office to verify it. Okay, but that is a fact. Okay, so that's a different fact than a mathematician telling you that his theory that a particle can be at two places at once is a fact and that they've proven it because otherwise computers wouldn't work. That's a different nonsense kind of fact. Okay, so let's distinguish fact from fact. And here we're talking about exactly, the example I've given here, here, let me show you. This is what they're saying. They're saying, this fellow, this individual, lady, man, woman, whatever pronoun you want to use, okay? That some of these patents that they have out there, this is what she was talking about, have been around for maybe 50, 60 years, okay? So if there's a patent out there on something, well, it's something you can verify. And you can say, well, this guy's lying or this gal is telling the truth, so you can go either way. Okay, so it's something verifiable. In fact, I took the trouble to find out if it was true or not. I went there to verify, to make sure that I'm comfortable with this issue, right? And this individual, this gal, she's saying the antidote, that they developed the antidote for this poison, for this ailment, before anyone knew about it. So here you have the bubonic plague, right? And it doesn't come until, 1348. That's when the first big, Black Death issue occurred in Europe. And here you go to the patent office in 1346, 2 years earlier, and you patent an antidote for the Black Death. Now that's a little irrational, a little counterintuitive. Why would you patent something for a disease that doesn't exist? You see the issue? This is what this lady was raising, okay? And so it's irrational to patent an antidote before the poison exists. That's the issue, okay? And so, yeah, it comes down to censorship. They censored this individual. They're censoring me. I mean, they're blocking me, right? Um, and you know, here these are lies that are deliberately. You can say they're lies, outright lies. That's one possibility. There's another possibility is that they have different version of that same story. Okay, and I do want to say something about that because this fellow says, "Oh, Bill, you believe everything you read out there?" No, no. In fact, the first step is be skeptic. Be skeptical. Okay, and I was cautious. This individual was talking very straightforward, sounded knowledgeable, spit out a lot of facts, and I accepted the facts at face value to understand what it was all about. Out of that dissertation, I reached my own conclusion that I'm going to investigate this. I want to understand it myself. And not because it has much to do with extinction, but because of the way news is handled, which is very, very important here. Okay, that's the issue. Especially you're talking about censorship, right? And so I went out there and looked at by the way, yeah, puts all countries on the level of North Korea when they do that. Nobody can say that, oh, we have freedom over here and they don't have freedom over there. No, no. If you do what they did to this individual and then to me, no, that's no different than North Korea. Absolutely none. So no one can point their fingers at anybody else out there. But anyways, I went and investigated and I said, well, was there a patent? And yes, there were patents, not one, but many. In the last 60 years, there are several patents, big corporations. Okay. So what's the issue? The issue is that there's two sides to this story. And I'm just making you aware of it. You reach your own conclusions. I just want to make you aware that there are two sides to this story. There's the side this individual talked about and said, look, it's been around and they patented this 2 years before it happened and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I went to see where this news came from. Okay, this news came from an article that was written by a group that analyzed this whole thing, and their conclusion was that there was a strip of molecules. Okay, molecules, atoms, you know, and this string of molecules was found in the poison. And they said, that's so strange because why would we find it here and there? This is too much of a coincidence. It doesn't happen in nature. And some other people went and made a counter argument. And they said, well, these people are wrong. It is found in nature automatically. You find it in animals. Okay. And so all I can give you is the argument and the counter argument. The argument is this doesn't happen by chance. And the counter argument is no, it doesn't happen by chance, but it's already in nature. Okay, so you got to be careful. Don't take any sides until you do deep research on this. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Now, the fact that this fellow is this individual censored does make you wonder why would they go out of their way to censor. Okay. Okay, so all I can say is for those of you who want to know what I'm talking about, here we see at the bottom, okay, you can go there and you'll find it. I uploaded it there, okay, so you can just click there and you'll find I put it up there today. You can go to the site and then see it for yourself, see what this lady has to say about this subject, okay, and I'll leave you with that. But all I'm saying is have a word of caution for you, and that is do an investigation before you reach your conclusion. When you listen to this individual, you would immediately think, oh, okay, yeah, it's always been like that and blah, blah, blah. No, don't stop there. Keep going, look it up, okay? I can put the number of the patents, okay, also. I've got that as well. Look them up A lot of it is a lot of mumble jumble. It's the jargon, very high level jargon. So if you don't understand a lot of that, you may not understand the arguments. It's not so easy, okay? All I can tell you is there are two sides of the story to this story, and just, have an open mind in both directions, okay? And I'll leave you with that, okay? Okay, anyways, let's moving on here. We have this issue. We have that some countries are trying to get away from the dollar as much as they can, and they're trying to see if they can do some commerce, some trade out there without using the dollar. And I hope they don't censor me for this. We have Brazil and China recently struck a deal to settle trade in their local currencies. Okay, and what they want to do is bypass the greenback. India and Malaysia, same thing. And then you have France is also starting to complete transactions in the yuan. Okay. Currency experts are leery, sounding like Cassandra, but it says predicted the dollar's imminent demise on any number of occasions over the past century. And yet, in observing this sudden wave of agreements aimed at sidestepping the dollar, they detect a sort of meaningful action, however small and gradual, that was typically missing in the past. So we have a new situation where some countries are talking about this. They're making plans, okay? And for many global leaders, their rationales for taking these measures are strikingly similar. And what are they? They're worried about America's foreign policy priorities and the fact that it punishes those who oppose them. Okay, so this is what it's all about. So this is on its way. A lot of people say, well, it's not going to happen because the dollar is just so widespread, blah, blah, blah. But the pound used to be the currency of the world for some time until the dollar replaced it. So keep that in mind. Just be cautious, okay? And some countries say, hey, the fact that these folks are using that as a weapon is hurting our economy, and so we're going to take measures. And maybe they have no other choice but to go in that direction, and that creates a parallel coinage or many coins. Everybody does business in their own coin or whatever. And if that happens, it's going to diminish the influence of the dollar, okay? Okay, so here's another view of that. It says the BRICS bloc, there you have Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is becoming an increasingly significant alliance against the West in the wake of Putin's war. The alliance is set to become much more geopolitical heavyweight. A further 18 nations have expressed interest in joining. So you can see that this might be growing. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but there's always a starting point, and that seems to be the case here, right? In addition to expanding its membership, the alliance is also discussing plans to introduce a cross-border currency for BRICS countries. It's been driven by Russia and China, and specifically by the need to try and find these alternative spaces for commerce that are outside of Western norms, and particularly Western sanctions. Okay, a lot of countries are becoming aware the United States is using that as punishment and to get their way, and they don't like it. And so it might be a double-edged sword to do what the United States did to Russia, and just creates a precedent that other countries say, "Whoa, I don't want that happening to us. So why don't we take some measures in advance?" And I think that's where they're at right now. They're in discussions only, okay, and I think it's very unlikely that it's going to happen in a very short time, that countries switch to some other currency or reach some parallel agreements. The dollar is very strong in the world, but just keep that in mind. There's always a starting point. This is the ABC, and sometimes you reach XYZ. Okay. In another matter, here we have the nukes. Says amid the crisis triggered by the Ukraine conflict, President Vladimir Putin announced in February that Russia was suspending participation in the New START Treaty, an agreement signed in 2010 that limits the number of Russian and U.S. deployed strategic nuclear warheads. Moscow and Washington control 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, and Moscow would only return to a nuclear arms reduction treaty if Washington abandons its hostile stance, which the United States is not about to do in the short term. So for the short term, there's no agreement, no START. And no start means that, everybody gets to do their own little secret developments, tests, whatever they do. And it creates a more dangerous world, okay? Especially when they're at war in one place and maybe we start another war somewhere else in the Pacific. Um, not very good for humanity, for the powers that be not to be friendly with each other. You would think that the opposite would be nice, that everybody, picks up the red phone and starts talking and say, okay, Joe, don't worry about it. Let's drink some vodka or champagne or whiskey or whatever and get it over with, and we reach an agreement. That's not happening right now. They don't seem to be on friendly terms. Now, there's a lot of people out there, some conspiracy theorists, and they'll say that all this is talked about in secret, but they do indeed shake hands. Personally, I don't believe in that conspiracy theory. I don't believe that Putin and Biden are kissing each other, and having fun while the world suffers. I don't think that's happening. I think this is for real. Okay, I think the navies are moving around the world. They're all doing their own thing. They're all trying to gain influence, and we're headed to a bipolar world where we have the East versus West. Essentially, that's what's happening. And this is a little different than what happened with Persia or Greece or Rome. This is a totally different story because now we're talking about the entire planet. Okay, it's a closed system right now. Before it wasn't a closed system because there was room for expansion, new tribes, new countries, you could say, that would emerge. That's not the case now. This is the end. This is end game kind of stuff. Okay. So yeah, I think that when, not if, but when the world collapses, meaning when humans become extinct, nukes will probably be part of the fireworks. Okay, I'm almost sure about that. Now, I don't think there's enough nukes to blow the whole planet out. There's enough nukes maybe to destroy the other guy's silos. That's one issue. And the other one is they'll destroy maybe a few cities. But then the issue, as far as I'm concerned, is the destruction of the global economy. We will not recover from that. Okay, and that's my argument on that. Okay, here's one individual. He says, you cite a collapse in the food chain and a collapse in genetic diversity. Yeah, those are two different mechanisms, okay? Are you saying that we're going the way of the Gros Michel? Well, apparently he said there's this banana that went away because lack of genetic diversity, and that there's another banana that replaced this one. Okay, if there's little genetic diversity to work with, the introduction of a sudden shocking stressor could potentially wipe us all out. Yeah, and again, that's not the theory we propose here. Okay, this is why, for example, the Tassie tiger, the Tasmanian tiger, went extinct because they were so inbred that they could not adapt to all the hunting. Well, I don't think that's the reason the poor old Tassie went away, okay? Is this your theory? No, absolutely not. We need to understand what I'm proposing here. And what I'm proposing here is not genetic diversity. I'm saying that genetic diversity is happening. In other words, we're losing genetic diversity, okay? We're all clones. And the reason we know that we're clones is we matched our genetic diversity against chimps, and a troop of chimps out there in Africa has more genetic diversity than the entire human race, than 8 billion people. And you say, how can that possibly be? Here we have all these individuals, each one has mutations every day. We should have a lot of genetic diversity. We don't. Compared to chimps in a troop, maybe 100 monkeys there, they have more genetic diversity among them than the entire human race of 8 billion people. I hope that sinks in. It has to make you think a little bit, right? Okay, so this is what we're proposing here, okay? We're saying the following. There's two mechanisms of extinction as far as this site is concerned. One is a background extinction. The other one is a mass extinction. Background is a demographic, a population pyramid overturn. The other one is an ecological pyramid overturn. You have all these trophic levels, okay? Okay, so what are we talking about? We're saying that the first one is after millions of years, plants lose their genetic diversity, okay, and they can't radiate anymore because there are no new niches to conquer, and Mother Nature has lost, doesn't have in the magic wand anymore gifts to give these plants. So they reach kind of like the end of the line. They can't diversify anymore, and they've reached their full potential for that order or for that family or for that species. And that happens also to animals. Animals, you have a species, they reproduce. At the beginning, it expands, greatly, especially its genetic diversity. But at some point, it turns the corner and the curve starts coming down all the way to extinction. It's a long curve, but it's always a downward slanted curve. And why is that? Because you have bottlenecks and you have founders effects, and those trump, those overrule the periodical mutations that these plants have, or animals. It doesn't matter if it's plant or animal. The mechanism is the same. Okay, that's a different mechanism than we have for the overturning of the ecological pyramid, which is what causes a mass extinction. Mass extinction is a sudden extinction of entire families or orders, whereas the population pyramid overturn is species specific. Okay, so the background extinction explains how one species dies. The other one explains how many species die suddenly. Two different mechanisms. What is the mechanism? The mechanism is that food disappears gradually and more towards the end because of the demographic overturning of the pyramid of plants. Animals who are stuck to those plants find fewer and fewer plants. The island shrinks, the forest shrink, the jungle shrink, right? They find fewer food, but it turns out that they've expanded in numbers at the same time that the food sources are disappearing. Okay, and so what happens at some point? They don't have enough food to eat, and at some point they collapse. The whole system collapses, and it involves orders. It involves many families of species that depend on the same sources of food. So in a relatively short period of time, maybe of 1,000 years, they all die. A whole order disappears. What has disappeared? A food chain. Because what disappears first are the herbivores because their food sources disappear, and right behind them are the carnivores. That's more or less the situation. It happens on land, in the air, and in the sea. Okay, so it's universal. So that's the mechanism that we propose. How is man going to die? He's not going to die in a population pyramid overturn. Not going to die because the genetic diversity has disappeared among humans. If we're going to die, we're going to die in a mass extinction. We're going to die suddenly. Why? Because food disappears. Food disappears. Why? Because someone produces it today and it ain't you. That's the problem. Someone brings it with a golden spoon, puts it in your mouth. Okay, that's why you are able to live one more day. And all we have to do is get rid of money, and then the producer doesn't have any reason to produce it, package it, and transporter doesn't have to transport it to you, put it on the shelves for you, and you're on your own at that point. Okay, so once money disappears, food disappears. Why will money disappear? Because our global economy cannot expand forever. That's the summary for that. Okay, so you cannot have the global economy just expand forever. At some point, it's going to stop expanding. When it does, not if, but when it does, money will be no more. Nobody will accept money of any kind any more than you accept Argentine pesos or Vietnamese, whatever they're called, or whatever all that money is. That's just paper money, numbers in the computer. Nobody cares about those. Right now, we give it importance because we can do something with that money. But in the future, when no one accepts it, you will not receive it either. And at that point, we're all dead. Okay, so that's, in a nutshell, the story. Okay, so let's move on to our subject for today, which are vectors. Okay, here we had a couple of people who can put us on the right track, and they started criticizing or giving their ideas about what a number is. Remember, we covered number and then number line, and the vectors, we're going to say, are very much related to those, okay, especially the mathematical vectors, not so the physical vectors. Okay, so one fellow says the following. He says, a number isn't the count, which is what we said here, okay? A number is the symbol or word. Absolutely not. That's called the numeral, okay? Number is not a numeral. The numeral, there you see the definition. That's not my definition, by the way. That comes from the establishment, okay? A figure, symbol, or group of figures, number line, or symbols denoting a number, okay? So the numeral is the hieroglyphic that you put, the little drawing that you put in on paper or wherever, okay? That symbol is known as the numeral. What does it represent? It represents a number. What is number? The verb to count. It's a verb. Okay? As you can see it down there at the bottom. Okay? Counting. Okay? 5 is the numeral. Okay? Numeral 5 represents number. The problem here is that sometimes we say the number 5. We should be using the word numeral and say the numeral 5. Okay? But we're referring to the quantity, meaning what does the 5 represent, and we call that a number, but we say the number 5, and that's where people get confused. Now we should say the numeral 5, which represents counting. You counted 5 times. You know, you moved your arm back and forth and said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's what it stands for, because we have another gentleman here who brought up an issue. Okay, anyways, the numeral 5 is the waving of the hand up and down. That's what it is. How many times? I don't know, depending on what numeral you're talking about. Okay, so that's the difference between a numeral and a number. Okay, let's see if we can get that straight. Here we have another gentleman. He says the following. Says, to count is an action. Yes, absolutely right. If you don't count, then you haven't counted. No, absolutely wrong. I say Joey could have run. Did you understand what I just said? Well, do you understand the meaning when I say run? Does Joey have to run? Do I have to run? No, I just need to understand the word run. Okay, not everybody in the world has to run in order to talk about the word run. Certainly a person who's quadriplegic might not be able to run. Okay, so, but hopefully they can understand the word run, what the word run means. We are distinguishing between operations and counting. No, absolutely not. That's not what we're doing. We are defining the word number. Okay, let's see if you can concentrate on that. We are distinguishing between actual counting and the meaning of the verb to count. Okay, so you don't have to actually count, you just have to understand the meaning of the verb to count. What does to count mean? Doesn't mean you're going to count just to say, oh, I want to understand the word to count, so I'm going to count. No, you don't have to count. You just have to understand the word to count. 1 billion can be said and a hand waved. Yeah. Is that what 1 billion is conceptually? Yes, that's what it is conceptually. That's what you did. 1 billion is to count until you say 1 billion. No, absolutely not. You don't have to count. We don't all have to count to 1 billion to understand what the term 1 billion or the symbol 1 followed by 9 zeros means. Okay, 1 billion means that the numeral 1 followed by 9 zeros stands for hand waving to a billion. Okay, in fact, there was one fellow, someone mentioned it, so I looked it up, and he's right. It says Jeremy Harper is an American entrant in the Guinness Book of World Records for counting aloud to 1 million, live streaming the entire process, which took what? 89 days. So the guy went to sleep, woke up and kept counting, okay, it took 89 days. And he began on June 18, okay, and ended up in September, right? His million count website and forum were taken down some months later. During the count, he neither left his home, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so someone apparently did count to 1 million. It took him 89 days. I doubt anybody has ever counted to 1 billion. Okay, so does that mean we don't know what 1 billion is because nobody has ever counted to 1 billion? No. We say that a 1 followed by 9 zeros represents the moving of your finger 1 billion times. That's what it represents. You have to understand the numeral, the symbol that represents counting. Okay? And again, you can't count to half. You can't count to 3/4. You can only count integers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Okay? You can only count integers. You can't count to 0. Okay? You can't count 0 apples, because 0 apples is the same as 0 trees, 0 elephants. Okay? So we don't count to 0. So 0 is not a number according to that definition. And again, you have all these negative numbers. Those are not numbers, okay, because those are operations performed on numerals, which represent numbers, which are counting. Okay, we got that? Okay, so here we have another fellow. He says the following. I'm not sure if it's the same one. It says, time is a 4-dimensional locational variable. The hypercube is geometrical 4th dimension. XYZ plus time is XYZ t. Well, we had a problem because I said the other day that time is a number line. And this fellow says it's a dimension. And today we're going to argue that time is actually a vector. But for this, we need to define these and what do these words mean? And again, we have to look at the definitions of math and the definitions of physics. Okay, so under the definition of physics, not even a vector or a dimension, it's a number line. But if we're going to go with the definition of mathematics, then time is a vector, not a dimension. Okay, so that's the argument. And here you can see you have X, Y, Z. Let's call it length, width, and height. Those are the 3 dimensions, right? The names of the dimensions, unless you have some other name, then those are standard. Okay, those are dimensions at least of physics. What they are in math, I don't know. What they call these 3 dimensions, I don't know. We call them length, width, and height in physics. But time is not a dimension, and you can see why from his example. He's saying, look, this is the hypercube, and that's a 4-dimensional object, and it's a XYZ plus t, t meaning time, right? There you see time in green. What are we talking about? We're saying that this cube expands and becomes a bigger cube. That's what the static image represents. In other words, the green lines that go from corner to corner, from the small cube to the big cube, that's an illustration that's depicting an expansion of the cube in three directions. 3 directions that we all know about, length, width, and height. Okay, so it's expanding. Okay, that's what it is. That's what the green line represents. Now that sounds like a vector to me, because that's what we've always identified vectors with. Mathematical vectors, by the way. Okay, so here it is. Okay, here you see it. This is the definition of vector. Okay, this is out of the Wikipedia. You can find it anywhere else as well. Vector, a geometric object. Okay, and you can see it's an object. It looks like a line with an arrow at the end, right? That has magnitude or length, it says, and direction. Represented by a directed line segment. Not a line, but a line segment. The difference is line is, in the religion of math, it's infinite, has no endpoints, and a segment does. Okay, graphically as an arrow connecting an initial point A with a terminal point B. So you can see it starts at A and it's indicating motion, okay, magnitude, and direction. Direction, well, only because it's got motion. Okay, vectors can be added to other vectors. Well, we don't add vectors in physics, but they do apparently, whatever vectors are in math, they do seem to add them. And the only reason they can add them is that they represent magnitude. But what are they? What is this vector showing? The blue one there. It's showing what we're seeing with time on the left-hand side. It's showing that there is motion. Okay, if you put the A where the one corner of the small box is, and you put B where the corner of the big box is, you can see what's happened. There's been motion from A to B. So time is not really a dimension, because dimensions are only X, Y, Z, meaning length, width, and height. unless there's another name for them. I don't know. Maybe math has some name for them that we are not aware of. But time cannot be a dimension. It's more like a vector because they're talking about motion, in this case, going from A to B. And in the case of the tesseract or hypercube, it's happening radially. It's happening all around. Okay, this thing is expanding in every direction. Okay, so I hope we got that. But there's there's a bigger problem also with the tesseract, and it's you can see not only is it expanding. Okay, that's the first thing you have to keep in mind. But it turns out that you will see out there that they rotate they'll show you the tesseract rotating. Okay, so now we're rotating time. I hope that sinks in. They're rotating time. Here's an illustration of what I'm talking about. Here's the hypercube or tesseract. Okay, you see it. What is a tesseract? Tesseract is a little cube that expands and becomes a big cube. That's what the yellow boxes there show. Goes from a small cube to a big cube. Okay, so they illustrate this whole movie in a single image, a static image, and they say, okay, look, it's expanded, and so we started out with a little cube. The arrows, the vectors, pointing outwards, showing that the corners are growing in size. Everything's expanding, like if it were a balloon, and it makes this bigger cube, and they call that whole shebang a tesseract, and they say it's an object. Well, we understand the object, it's just two nested cubes. That object we understand, none of that is four-dimensional. Okay, that's just a nested cube, one cube inside another. That's all it is. But what it represents is what you have to understand. What you're staring at is not a still image. What you're staring at is a movie of a box expanding. Okay, that's what a tesseract is. But they do something worse, and you see that on the bottom left-hand side there, the white ones. And the way they create every image here, because they're going to rotate this cube. First, the cube has to expand. You take a snapshot of that final cube. That's one frame of the movie. Now this thing rotates a little bit, okay? Now, but it's already small again. Now that one expands, and now you take a snapshot of that one. And so you have this movie of movies, okay? You have a movie of a box that's expanding, and then you have a movie of that motion being rotated. So you're rotating time whenever you rotate a tesseract. Scary stuff, okay? I can only comprehend it after 10 beers. Otherwise, you can't figure this out, okay? So yeah, very scary stuff. So yeah, so the question is, what is time? Is time a dimension or is it a vector? And what is the difference? Well, the vector is, again, motion from A to B. And that's what time is, because they're looking at magnitude and motion. And that's a vector. So why do they say it's dimension? Are they saying that dimensions and vectors are the same? Dimension is defined as a coordinate, as a number of coordinates, number of numbers, because a coordinate is a number. That's not what a vector is defined as in mathematics. It's defined as magnitude and direction. The problem with that, you cannot blend, you cannot merge, you cannot reconcile, okay, magnitude with direction. One has nothing to do with the other. Magnitude belongs to math. Direction is a concept that belongs exclusively to physics. Mathematics has no use for direction. You don't add directions. East plus east, what does that give you? Bigger east? North plus north? Left plus left? Forward plus forward gives you more forward? You don't add directions, okay? So that's the big issue. The issue is that you cannot blend what they're saying. Vector being magnitude and direction. Okay? It's either magnitude or it's direction. So number is to count. Okay, we got that? Numeral, what was a numeral? Numeral is the symbol you use to represent the verb to count. How many counts you made. Okay? Number line, it's essentially, a bunch of numbers. That's all it is. Do they fall on a line? No, you can't put numbers on a line. It makes no sense. Okay, to say, oh, they're on the same line. So, like you see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It makes no sense. That's just put in there so that it's nice to the eyes. Like saying, okay, the 2 follows 1. Okay, I understand that. It's bigger than the 1, and the 3 is bigger than the 2. And so we're going to put some kind of direction to make it easy on the eyes. But, when you're counting 2, 3, 4, 5, there is no direction. Number 2 doesn't fall eastwards of the number 5 or northwards or westwards of the number 5 or left and right, whatever coordinate system you use out there, whatever, lines you use out there to represent location. There is no location for numbers. So you cannot say the number 2 is on the right-hand side of the 5. It makes no sense. So number line, it has no direction, only has numbers, okay? And that's the scientific definition. Bunch of numbers, okay? That's the scientific definition of number line. Take it from me, okay? Bunch of numbers. It has no direction, no orthogonality. Those two qualitative properties, parameters, whatever, they belong exclusively to physics. They don't belong to math at all. Math has no use for direction or for orthogonality. No use whatsoever. And by orthogonality, I don't mean 90-degree angle. No, that's not what we mean. Orthogonality means that you put the plumb bob so that it points to the center of the earth and you see the horizon. We call that orthogonal. Now, if you want to put 90 degrees, you want to put 100 degrees there, you have your own system of angles, your own angular degrees. Hey, go ahead, invent your own system. No problem. It can be 100, 180, 500. Use whatever numbers you want. But perpendicularity, orthogonality, just means that one is like this, the other one is horizontal. One is vertical versus the other. Okay, that's all it means in physics. Okay, one is perpendicular to the other, means it's one is vertical, the other one is horizontal. Okay, so number line only has magnitude. Mathematicians confuse the number line with dimensions, coordinates, and vectors. And there you can see what's happening. You have these magnitudes, 1 through 5, whatever. Okay, that's got nothing to do with physics. Physics, we have length, width, and height. That's the dimensions. Okay, it's got nothing to do with the coordinate system, numbers, tick marks, location of a point within that group. Within those coordinates, as they call them. They're all number lines. One number line is pointed upwards, the other number line is going sideways. They call this a coordinate system. No, that's not coordinate. Those are number lines, not coordinates. Coordinates are, longitude, altitude, and elevation. Those are coordinates. Not elevation. Altitude, longitude, and radius. Radius? No? Well, the other one. Altitude, longitude, and latitude. Those are the three. Okay, but nothing to do with number lines. You don't need to have values for any of those qualitative coordinates. Okay, so here we have a little bit of a summary for all this. We have what's a vector in math? Okay, this is the mathematical vector, not the one of physics. Magnitude and direction. That seems to be a number line because number line is magnitude and direction. That's all it has, magnitude, but not direction. Direction belongs to physics. You can't depict number line with a line. Makes no sense to depict a number line with a line. Again, you cannot say that the number 3 is to the left or the right of the number 6. You can put them any way you want because it has nothing to do with direction. Okay? We artificially put them in a certain direction so that people say, oh, it's in an organized manner. 4 follows 3, which follows 2, which follows 1. We don't care about that in physics. Physics makes no sense to say that. Okay, line belongs exclusively to physics because it's an object, and math has no use for objects. Okay? Then you have direction. Again, it belongs exclusively to physics. Math has no use for direction. We do not add or subtract directions. East from east, subtract west from east. Yes, I don't know. Number line belongs exclusively to math, not to physics, okay? And whereas the dimensions, coordinates, and vectors, they belong exclusively to physics. What are dimensions? Length, width, and height. And coordinates, see if I can still remember that. Altitude, longitude, and is it latitude? And what are three vectors? Again, there's only three of them. There's only three perpendicular directions in which you can move, and that's what vectors are: motion. And from a given point, a reference point, you can only move in three perpendicular directions. Okay, and one is depth, the other one is breadth, and the other one is elevation. So those are the three vectors. Have to do solely with physics. Okay, they have nothing at all to do with math, number lines, numbers, ticks, and direction or magnitude, as they say, right? Okay, so they invented mathematical physics. What is mathematical physics? Mathematical physics is an attempt to merge numbers with objects. And the first religion was geometry. Okay? Geometry was the first one that tried to put numbers or explain or describe really in terms of numbers objects, especially angles and lines and points and all that stuff. They started putting numbers. So the points became numbers. They put many points. They call that a number line, because what is a line made of? Points, right? You figure that out, right? And then planes are made of lines, also of points. And solids are made of many planes, which are made of lines, which are made of points. And what did they do? They started putting numbers to all that because they wanted to see quantitative relationship, especially between angles. And that whole thing, trig and geometry, all that stuff, that was our first religion because we started putting numbers to objects and they're incompatible. And numbers, you can do all the equations you want, that belongs to math. The object and relations, you don't need to have quantitative relations. You can have qualitative relationships, okay, which is all that Mother Nature understands. And those belong exclusively to physics. So yeah, math and physics can never merge. Math is not the language of physics, never will be, okay? And that's how we're in the big mess that we are today. The fact that they created this religion known as mathematical physics. It's an attempt to merge physics objects, right, with numbers. And that's how we ended up with black holes and Big Bang and all this nonsense we have today. Okay, so here's a corollary for all that. It says dimension is defined as the number of numbers. They call it the number of coordinates. What is a coordinate? A number. So it's the number of numbers. That's the scientific definition from mathematical physics for the word dimension. Okay. So again, that's got to do solely with math. Okay. Vector is defined as magnitude and direction. Okay, even though the math has no purpose for direction. Mathematicians allege that time has magnitude and direction. Okay, so if time has magnitude and direction, which is what vector has, magnitude and direction, then pursuant to their own definition, time is a vector and not a dimension. Okay, so when they say that there's something called four-dimensional space-time, ask them which dimensions are those? Length, width, and height, and then you have the dimension of time. No, time, if anything, is a vector. You can say it's 3 and 1 at best. But it turns out length, width, and height are not the dimensions they're talking about. In fact, they confuse them all the time. They put length together with altitude, which is a coordinate, and length is or width, any of those. Those are dimensions. So they mix dimensions with coordinates, with vector, they call them depth or breadth. They don't care. They use all these words interchangeably because they're not talking about physics. They're talking about number lines. And they just make the mistake of saying, oh, this is a vector, so I'm going to call this one depth. And that one's a coordinate, and so I'll call it altitude. And the other one is dimension, and I'll call it width. And then they mix them up, and they don't care. And then they can put time in there because for them it's all just number lines. None of these have anything to do with dimensions, coordinates, or vectors. Okay? So I hope you learned what a vector is today. Okay, one question a fellow said here, he says, this is factorially more ropes. There are factorially more ropes than atoms because we're saying that all atoms are physically interconnected. Okay, it's an interconnected universe. We're not connected by energy. We're not connected by force. We're not connected by mass. We're not connected by fields because all those are mathematical concepts, quantitative concepts, more specifically. No, atoms are connected physically. That's what we propose here. And he says, well, hold it, but you have more ropes than atoms. Yeah, in fact, there you see there's this system here, 8 atoms, there you can see them, and they're connected by 28 ropes. Okay, so the question is the fun because see, they say, well, you can't fit too many ropes in there because there's no space for them. Well, space is that black stuff that you see between all these atoms. Do you see any black stuff there? Do you see that any rope is pushing the other one aside? No, obviously, space is what provides contour, therefore shape, to each one of those ropes, each one of those connectors. Okay, so no, I don't care how many. You can put a gazillion in there in that same space, and there will be space between any two ropes that are not on the same axis. Okay, so it's a non-issue. This issue that people raise, oh, so many ropes. Yeah, there's lots of ropes. There's a lot of atoms also. You want to count how many atoms are in the universe? What would you say? No, it's impossible. You can't have so many atoms in the universe. Well, just in the sun alone, how many atoms do we have? Solar system, the earth, you. Just in your body, how many atoms are you made of? Trillions? Can you imagine how many atoms there are in the universe? And people say, well, no, it can't be. I can't count that far. Yeah, no kidding. And so what does that have to do? What does quantity have to do with anything, especially if space is nothing? What do we mean by nothing? Nothing does not mean the absence of something. No, nothing means it has no shape. It's the opposite of that which has shape, which are the somethings. Okay, so it has no shape. It's not infinite and it's not finite. It simply has no shape. If it had shape, then you could say, well, it's finite. But if it's infinite, what do you mean by that? You mean that you can travel as far as you want, you won't find a wall? Is that what you mean by that? What does that mean? Does that mean you just need to travel a little farther? Because if you travel a little farther and find a wall, it's finite. That's all you're saying. You're saying that no matter how far you travel, you won't find a wall. Well, just travel farther. That's all I can tell you. Just keep traveling. It's like parallel lines. They define them as lines that don't meet at infinity. Well, I don't know. Travel to infinity and tell me. Okay? So these are irrational definitions. No, if space is a physical object, it has shape and it's finite. And there's no such thing as an infinite object. So either it has shape or it don't. Black or white. Okay, that's the way it is. And if it has shape, it's an object. If it doesn't have shape, it's called space. So space has all the space you want. Okay, you want to put a gazillion more atoms in the universe? If you could, no problem. Space can handle it because space is nothing. Okay, space gives you all the space you need. Okay, and people don't understand that. Okay, they say, no, you can't fit so many atoms in the universe because it would saturate space. Space is nothing, so you're not saturating anything. Okay, with that, we'll